Okay, we're back again for Sichos HaRan today. Unfortunately, I'm not able to do it live, so we're just doing a recording. Um, we're up to Sicha Chaf Gimel. We're in the middle of a few Sichos talking about the importance of connecting to tzaddikim. We spoke a little bit yesterday about how that can be understood, especially for those who might have some hesitance or some skepticism about the value of connecting to tzaddikim or fears around, sort of the power that's being given over to tzaddikim, or the extent to which perhaps a connection to the tzaddik can overtake actual avoda. And we'll have opportunity, I think, a little bit to talk about that more today, briefly at least. Sicha Chaf Gimel is a little bit long, so we're going to do it over a couple of days. But paragraph Aleph in Sicha Chaf Gimel begins as follows. Anava Amar, Rabbi Nachman said, Harachmanas shel ha'olam hazeh kol haroim. Everybody sees and appreciates and understands that there's a concept and a practice of compassion, of Rachmanos, that exists within this world. Ubishvil zen, because of this, hakol rodfim achar ha'olam hazen, because of this Rachmanos, because compassion is a practice that exists within this world, everybody is running after olam hazeh. What does that mean? Ki karoim kisha'adam ra'eh v'tzamo ki yotze kasha lamod. Because everybody sees that when a person is hungry or thirsty or is having other kinds of difficulties, financial or familial and etc., if a person's in a bad place, v'yesh rachmanas gadol olav, then there's lots of opportunity and lots of ways to have mercy, to have compassion on that person. How? You have someone who's hungry and other people step up and give them food, and you have someone in need of money and people step up and provide them with the money that they need, and someone can't make their rent and they send out a WhatsApp message to a few groups and with people that they know, and suddenly you have people pooling together to help them make their rent, and that's an incredible thing. And a person's going around naked, they don't have clothing, and they're destitute, they don't have a job, they don't have, they're embarrassed, they're ashamed, they're downtrodden, and there's Rahmanos that exists within this world that gets directed towards them. And as a result of that, people are constantly running after the things of Olam Hazeh, because no one wants to be the Rahmanos case. No one wants to be the recipient of this Rahmanos. Although, because such Rahmanos exists, and because when we don't have what we need, there are all kinds of mechanisms within this world, and there's a concept and an action and an energy within this world called compassion, where others who have will provide for those who don't. And those who don't have will receive not through their own hard work, but because of others' largesse and others' tzedakah. Nobody wants to be on the receiving end of this. Everyone prefers to be on the giving end rather than on the receiving end. And so what do? We push ourselves, and we're constantly seeking to make sure we have enough money, and we have clothing, and we have homes, and we can afford our rent and our mortgage and pay school tuition, and our children are taken care of, and we have our health. And we're always working to have all of the physical things that we need within this world, so that we shouldn't be on the receiving end of Rahmanas, because no one wants to be the ashamed, embarrassed person who has to go around asking for help from other people. But someone who has eyes and veroa and sees gadol harachmanos sheyeshlo v'anashamas b'olam haba. One who has eyes should also see that there's an incredible rachmanos that exists also in olam haba. Ki sham ba'olam haba nimtzaim b'nei adam sheholchim arumim mamish. Because in Olam Haba, right, not in this physical world, but in a spiritual reality that exists apart from physical needs, where everything is entirely dependent on our spiritual state rather than our physical possessions, there are people there who also, kaviyachol, metaphorically, go around naked. However, it's impossible to have rachmanas on them. Because in this world, when a person doesn't have clothing, you can go around and you can collect donations and buy them a coat. But in Olam Haba, Misha Holech Orum, Efshar L'Rachim Alav Klal. But in Olam Haba, there's no one. How can you have Rachma? What are you going to give such a person? Kisham ein Moel Shem Rachmanos. In Olam Haba, Rachmanos is unhelpful. Can't accomplish anything. Compassion is to no avail. Why? What does a person need in Olam Haba? What are we enclothed in, so to speak? What are our assets, our possessions that define the nature of our experience of Olam Haba, the nature of our experience of Yichud and Dveikus with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Olam Haba, without all of the trappings of Gashmius that create an experience of pirud and separation and materiality and distance between creator and created. In Olam Haba, all of that goes away. So what defines our that relationship and that closeness with HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Hello, hu rak malbush shel Torah mitzvos. The medium through which we encounter and experience Olam Haba and the Devekus and the assets of Olam Haba, it's purely through Torah and mitzvos. It's al yedei ma'asenu. L'zeh ein mol shum rachmanos. And rachmanos, compassion from other people, can't exactly provide us with Torah and mitzvos. Torah and mitzvos, asik b'Torah, growth in ruchnius, through Torah, through mitzvos, through avoda begashmius as well, right? Doing all of the things in this world that enable us to see and experience and appreciate the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the reality of Ein Od Milvado in a deeper and deeper way, in greater and greater detail in every aspect of our lives, more and more and more through our avoda. That only happens through our avoda. And because it only happens through our avoda ultimately, our medium of being connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of experiencing the Devekus through a Hakara of the Shechina, is entirely dependent on our actions. And so there is no Rachmanos. Here in this world, I can have food in my belly even if I didn't go to work and even if I didn't cook the food. Someone can hand me the food and I can eat it just the same. And I can have clothing on my body. I can have nice clothing on my body, even though I didn't work hard, make money, and go to the store and buy the clothing. My parents can buy me the clothing. My wife can go to the store and find me the clothing and bring it home to me, and I didn't have to work very hard for it. I might have worked to earn the money to pay for the clothing, but I can still wear the clothing even though I didn't shop for the clothing. And if I'm poor and I have no clothing, someone can donate clothing, and suddenly there's clothing on my back. And that's the way the physical world works. But the spiritual world doesn't work that way. We have what we earn. This is built into the Tachlis Habriya, as all of the Sfarim talk about. Many of the Sfarim talk about that part of the Tachlis Habriya is for us to experience Dveikus with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but Dafka al Yedei are our Avodah and our Maisim. Dafka al Yedei Masenu. Why? Because, as we know from the Arizal and from many, many, many other sources, because without our experience of our spiritual currency being earned, we would experience Nahama de Kisufa. We would experience this sense of embarrassment that everyone in Olam Hazeh is trying to avoid. That's why they're trying to make money and trying to have all the assets and trying to have the food on the table and clothing on their back to avoid the Nahama de Kisufa of having to receive something that they didn't earn. So it takes away. I have nice clothing, right? Sometimes you go to the thrift store and you find sort of a designer something or other, and then you bring it home and you got it for $1, and it's pretty exciting, but it takes something away from the fact that you didn't really earn the designer shoes or belt or shirt or whatever it is, because you got it for $1. It was a freebie. And so you wear it and people say, oh wow, look at this, a Chanel bag that you have, or a Versace suit or whatever it happens to be, and it's nice. But there's always a twang of, but it's not really mine. I can't really sit pretty with it and sort of be comfortable and confident in it because it's not really mine. I didn't earn it. And to avoid that, in order to experience the goodness of Dveikus with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the built-in system is it has to happen al yedei ma'asenu. And that means that when it comes to inyanim beruchnias, in Olam Haba, where all of our assets are only ruchnias assets, there's nothing to receive. We can't have Rachmanas. And so part of what Rabbi Nachman is saying over here is, if we're all running after Gashmias, if we're all, and we are and we need to, if we're all running after the Tzarchei Olam Hazeh because we don't want to experience the pain and embarrassment of having to receive that which we haven't earned, despite the fact that at least we haven't earned in this world, because lachas kama v'kama, how much more so ought we be running after ruchnius, after avoda baruchnius, after ruchnius assets, Torah and mitzvos, and avoda begashmius, and dveikus, and yichud, and avoda and tikkun amidos, and all of the other good things that we can do in this world. How much more so we should be running after them, because not only because if we don't earn it here, we're not going to have it anywhere. And how embarrassing would that be? Not only will we be having to wear a borrowed coat or eat a donated meal, but we'll be naked and not have any food in our belly, so to speak, spiritually at all. And we should certainly be seeking this out. But then he goes on and he says there's a way out of this. He says, Avomisha amiti, but someone who's able to connect to a true tzaddik, as we talked about yesterday, a true tzaddik, someone who's able to reveal to them their chesronos and milos all in one shot, without either one taking away from the other, right? Being connected to and associated with and relating to a real tzaddik. Who yachol laretz lahat tzaddik, a person with no maisim tovim, without the assets, the spiritual assets in olam haba, they can run to the tzaddik likeach etzlo and take from the tzaddik clothing to wear, something to wear. They can take something to wear for themselves. So this is another maila, another benefit of connecting to a tzaddik amiti, connecting to a true tzaddik. I keep saying a true tzaddik rather than the true tzaddik, because I think it's very important. Ein tzaddik doma lechavero. There is no the true tzaddik. That sounds terribly, terribly dangerous to me. But there is true tzaddikim. And there are untrue tzaddikim, as Rabbi Nachman talks about in many places. There are false tzaddikim too. There are tzaddikim who with the pomp and the circumstance and the appearance of tzaddikim, who are not true tzaddikim. But there are true tzaddikim out there, and everyone should connect to the ones that they connect to. But by connecting to a tzaddik, even though I may be lacking in my assets, my spiritual assets, come olam haba, I can, so to speak, bask in the glow of the spiritual assets of these tzaddikim that I connect to, that I have connected to. And there are various ways of understanding how this works. But essentially, I'm picking up spiritual assets from the tzaddikim that I connect to. Rabbeinu Bachai has an explanation for this or a little bit of an explanation for this, sort of in Parshas Ve'era, where he comments on the pasuk which says that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu is destroying Sodom and Amorah, it says that Vayizkar Elokim es Avram, that it says, and Hashem remembers Avram, and immediately he takes Lot out of the city and saves Lot. And the explanation there, right? Lot is riding Avram's coattails, so to speak. Lot doesn't deserve to be saved, but Lot is riding Avram's coattails. And the Rabbeinu Bachai explains that the reason why Lot is able to ride Avram's coattails is because, in a certain sense, Lot finds himself in the position that he finds himself because of Avraham. Because he followed Abraham. He's one of the followers of Abraham that leaves with Abraham from HaRan and comes to Eretz Canaan. And the Rabbeinu Bachai goes on and analogizes the sort of Lot and Abraham to the idea of sort of a tick of a bag or a package or a box or a covering that you put a Sefer Torah in, or you put tefillin in, which the Gemara in Shabbos says you can move in the case of a fire. You're allowed to save the Sefer Torah, you're allowed to save the tefillin, even though they're muktzah, or there's a hotzah involved. You can save the Dvarim Shebekdusha. And not only can you save the Dvarim Shebekdusha, but you can save the package that they're in also. You can save the box that the Sefer Torah is in, carry the box out, or carry the cover out. You can not only save the tefillin, but you can save the tefillin, the bag that the tefillin are in. And this is true even if the bag has money in it. Even if the bag has some other davar ha'aser in it that is not dvarim shebekdusha, that you're not allowed to save, you can still save the bag. Why can you save the bag? Because the bag is part of what makes the tefillin special, and part of what protects the tefillin. In a certain sense, I think those who connect to tzaddikim are part of what make the tzaddikim tzaddikim. Tzaddikim without followers, tzaddikim without people who appreciate their tzidkus and grow through their tzidkus and are inspired by their tzidkus, are not full tzaddikim, really. They're missing something. They're missing something important. Part of what it means to be a tzaddik, just like we say Ein Melech below Am with respect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we could say Ein Tzaddik below Talmidim with respect to a tzaddik as well. If you don't have people who are makasher themselves to a tzaddik, and therefore growing through the tzaddik, then the tzaddik, well, what are they for? They're just for themselves. They're private tzidkas for themselves. But if they're not teaching, and teaching requires having students, if they're not inspiring requires having constituents and those who pay attention to you and those who are connected to you, then what's the tzaddik for? And then not such a tzaddik at all. The whole point of the tzaddik is to be able to raise up those around them and bring them closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu as well. And so, in a certain sense, there's an arevos, there's an intermingling and interdependence between those who connect to the tzaddik and the tzaddik. And those who connect to the tzaddik are therefore able to draw on the zechusim and the accomplishments of the tzaddik, because in a certain sense, those accomplishments are in and of themselves dependent on the fact that a person went ahead and connected themselves to the tzaddik as well. Okay, we're over time, so we're going to stop for now. There's another nice explanation, a couple other nice explanations for this idea. Maybe we'll continue that tomorrow. But for now, wishing everybody a lovely day.